Good morning, everyone. I'm Frederik, founder and CEO of ReVision Implant, one of the only companies in the world that's basically daring enough to try to tackle this blindness. Blindness is a hugely underestimated medical condition. About 18 million people in the world are blind and, of course, totally excluded from most aspects of social and economic life. Also, if you would just ask people the condition they would surely not want to get, it would be either cancer or blindness. So we are in the right session here. Now, of course, for a long time, people have been wondering, are visual prostheses feasible? It's something you already have seen in science fiction for quite a while. Somebody gets blind, gets some kind of implant, gets a visor, and can regain useful vision. There is a scientific basis for this. We all know it. If you stimulate electrically the nervous system, that leads to some kind of sensory functionality, you will regain some sensation. This is also shown for the visual system. You can do it in the eyes, you can do it in the optic nerve, you can also do it in the primary visual cortex of the brain. However, to upscale to useful levels, some more developments are needed. That's why current solutions are still lacking. So basically, people can only get canes, guide dogs, some more advanced things like reading software, Braille, but there's no general way to restore the feeling of real vision. Nevertheless, early visual prostheses were already developed. One of the most famous companies is called Second Sight, but they were not a commercial breakthrough. Why? I'll just show you on the next slide. The performance was really lacking. So companies so far have been building things which restore an image quality equivalent to a few hundred pixels. If you just would downsample an image to a few hundred pixels, you would immediately see that this does not contain enough information to convey useful vision. On the other hand, if you would downsample an image to a few thousand pixels, which is also not that much in the time of megapixel images, of course, you would recognize shapes, you would recognize where people are standing, you would be able to read with some magnification, even regular-sized letters. So this is what we should aim at. The market potential for something like this can be estimated in a few ways. Of course, we've asked blind people if they would want to go through a surgical procedure that includes brain surgery to regain vision. Not so much of a surprise, 90% said yes. Sales price would be about 100K. In the US and the EU population combined would be about 650K. That means, of course, a huge, totally addressable market. Of course, this is only a maximum. We can also compare with the cochlear implant market. Cochlear implants do neural stimulation for restoring hearing to completely deaf individuals. They're a huge success at this point already because they can be based on more simple technology. It's a $2 billion per year market. Now it's still growing at 10%. The market leader is worth $10 billion. So this is basically what we want to become in, say, a decade, the market leader for visual prosthesis with a similar market size. Now, of course, the question is, how can you achieve this? Because people have failed in the past. First of all, we're not going to implant in the eye because the eye is, the sensitive part of the eye is much, much smaller. We're going directly to the visual cortex of the brain, and it has been shown in people that if you stimulate in the primary visual cortex of the brain, and if you would be able to implant something like 10,000 electrodes, you would actually get 10,000 pixels. We're aiming at a little bit lower. I've already shown you a few thousand would be enough for a minimum viable product. Next to that, we will also create so-called virtual electrodes. So basically, instead of just one stimulation pattern, we send the current that goes out of every electrode in different directions, and we have proven already using transgenic mice that these can actually be used to excite different regions of the brain. So one electrode can basically create 4 or 5 virtual electrodes and thereby potentially increasing the resolution. Now, the type of electrodes is also quite crucial. You really want to have super flexible electrodes that move with the brain. Just because you implant so much, you want absolutely minimum scar tissue formation. And finally, you need to insert them. So there you need an insertion mechanism. You cannot just insert them by themselves. It won't work because they're too flexible. And you will also insert them in the entire visual cortex, not just a superficial part like some people aim at, because superficial part is only like 5% of the visual cortex. The rest is buried a few centimeters below the skin and indeed below the surface, and indeed our implants are suitable for this. So in general, a system would look like this, like, a bit like every attempt on a visual prosthesis so far, with the difference that there is a brain implant that is based on these ultra-high resolution flexible electrodes. We are an early stage startup, and I'm happy to announce that for all the crucial parts, we have working prototypes. We have also, well, I'll show them now. So we have an optimized wafer scale fabrication process. We are really focused on lifetime engineering. So we have proven a lifetime of the electrodes under realistic conditions of over 10 years, which is the FDA minimum. We have also installation lifetime over 10 years, and we have also proven that you can insert these electrodes at a required density in rhesus monkeys. Speaking of them, we've done preclinical tests on trained rhesus monkeys, so basically they learn to point their eyes towards dots they see. Then they see on the screen, they get a brain implant. I'm happy to know that afterwards the monkeys are not blind, they can still see even though they have hundreds and hundreds of electrodes in a tiny part of their visual cortex. Then they're put in a dark room and basically can repeat the same experiment when seeing no real dots on the screen, but virtual dots that they can only see by brain stimulation. Of course, we're doing this over and over again, so we have statistically significant evidence that this is actually working. Unlike our main competitor, the company called Neuralink, everybody has heard of, we have actually proven stability. We're doing this for several years, and the electrodes nicely stay in place. We've also proven a very nice biocompatibility. So the picture on the left is actually a current state-of-the-art deep brain stimulation implant, which yields a scar of a few square millimeters. The lesions that our electrodes leave after several years are typically 100x smaller. And this is, of course, what you need because we also want to implant 100 times more electrodes. So basically, the safety profile would be similar to the existing state-of-the-art. This is just an illustration. Well, it's actually based on real measurements of the calcium imaging experiments that we do. Based on statistical analysis of this, we can actually prove that you can excite different patterns with current coming from one electrode. In terms of electronics development, we're not that far in the sense that all the experiments I've shown so far are done with external electronics, but we do have working prototypes of an integrated circuit to steer everything, external electronics, also wireless power and data transfer, and a first version of a stimulation algorithm. We have raised about 2.4 million so far, mostly non-dilutive funding. At this point, we're looking for funding a very first-in-human test, which would be basically based on the monkey experiments with the external electronics that are already qualified. So the step towards the first-in-human is the smallest as can be. And this is really what you need because this is the particularity of these sensory prostheses. You really need feedback from a human being to be able to optimize the stimulation algorithm and to have a final proof of concept. At the very least, you would need 3 million. If you could raise more, we could also develop the whole system in parallel. So in terms of competition, there are some companies a bit closer to the market past human tests, but they have a very limited number of electrodes. So I don't think there will be a breakthrough. The main competitor is Neuralink, of course, but we have long-term data, and we actually have proven that our electrodes stay in the brain. We have a really nice team. There's 7 people working on the company full-time. There's also people working through academic collaboration. So in total, it's about 10 FTEs. We have collaboration with a neurosurgeon, several relevant professors, and now also somebody who has already done first-in-human experiments of limited-size electrodes arrays in humans, and he would then, of course, also execute our first-in-human trial. Also, our board is there, and people from McKinsey and also serial entrepreneurs. There's lots of partners, of course, that have contributed, and they have allowed us to do this on basically a shoestring budget. And just to repeat my final call, we're raising about, at the minimum 3 million, ideally 4, which we can actually amplify thanks to the local government funding with a factor of 2, which would be more than enough for first-in-human to build the entire system and prepare it for further clinical testing. We would need another 12. Thank you for listening, and if there's any questions, I'll be around to answer them.